romantic relationship. I feel I wonder if it would be better to say I'm not interested in a romantic relationship. It's a purely transactional and sensual experience. And so Neil's going to tell us just a little bit about presenting oneself to potential sexual partners. Emil?
Yes. You know, dating sites, there's a lot of these, and some of them have not very good matching algorithms that use zodiac signs and this sort of thing. It doesn't work, or their own personality test, not validated, doesn't work. However, this one site, they do something that does work, because it was made by a mathematician, and mathematicians, they do math. So basically, this site works by having thousands of questions, and these are mostly user-generated questions, so they can get all kinds of stuff, including stuff that researchers would never get approval to ask for, or ask about. And people, they fill out this stuff because they want to find other people with the same answers, right? They want to match. So, and when they do that, they do it publicly, which means you can go there and you can write it down. And so, if you had an army of chimps, you could have them all sit and copy-paste all day, and maybe you could get a data set. But now we have computers, and they're basically fast chimps. So if you tell the computer in the right way, it can do it for you. And someone did this, me, and that's why we now have data on these 70,000 users, about 2,000 something questions and all this stuff. And since it was all public, I just basically took what was public and I put it in another public data set that's easier to use. And this is what you get for doing this kind of thing. So if you've been looking on the internet, there's actually a lot of these. And so basically, right now, I'm the most notorious person in here. Maybe took over the spot from Woodley, but many people.
Damn you.
So it will go out there in case you hear about someone who did something horrible, like copying public data and putting it publicly. And of course, they did contact me, but given that these journalists are what they are, and so on, you can expect what you can read in this. That's all I want to say.
Oh, sorry, what works? Can you tell us?
Yes, come on. Yes. I ask not for myself, of course. I have a 1 hour lunch break. You know? Time is of the essence.
Yes. Well, the thing is that you can't really tell what works because you only have the public data. And so OKCupid, this dating site, they actually did a lot of their own analysis using the private data, so you can see who actually writes to each other using all this stuff, so they can see what really works. But we can't because we can't really see.
So what we will get there is what the questions asked are. Is that?
Yeah, you have the questions and you have the answers.
Okay.
You cannot see who's talking to whom. So you cannot see what's working.
So do we have a frequency analysis of what things people are interested in most?
Oh, yeah. Well, you could do that. But if you want to do it like that, there's 2,000 questions. If you want to read through, Julius, where did he go? Over there. He did the nice work of going through all of them and coding them and saying, oh, this question is about this topic, so you can search by keyword.
Julius, can you give us what the topics are then? Well, what are people interested in?
Yeah, well, I tried to categorize them broadly.
Yes.
Most often it's just questions who describes themselves, like what do you like, or it could be mostly about sex. Especially, there's a lot of questions about BDSM. Apparently, they're tough to find. But not only descriptive about themselves, like how tall are you, or have you finished any education or something, but also, as I mentioned, what they like and what they're capable of doing, like running a marathon or whatever. And I think that's. One more. A lot of questions about religion and superstition.
What about income?
Income. Yeah, you can put that. That's actually on each person's profile. So there's
true, then, isn't
politics.
Politics as well. Politics, religion, sex, and descriptive, and preferences. Those are the big 5 categories.
Because I know that in arranged marriages, certainly within Islam and probably also within Jews, you ask about the height of the person.
Oh, yes.
And the highest achieved educational attainment.
Yeah.
And that's it. Then they say meet. And there's a controlled meeting of a particular sort I can describe with family members present.
When I was in India, I got the Times of India on Sunday, and they have a marriage section. It's the skin tone,
A skin tone, I see.
Skin tone,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
But there are also
Yes.
some math puzzles even in these
Yes.
data,
There's
right?
an
Yeah.
You can make an IQ test, which I already did.
Yeah.
That is the last category, cognitive ability items, but also preferences for cognitive ability. Apparently, some people will not have the same preferences that
Yes.
we might have.
Yes, they want dollar partners. There's another item, if you look at, I did a thing on people's Google behaviors according to their intelligence. Came out about a year ago.
It's
Did you?
stated in the
Yeah, it's the Hello Kitty
Yeah.
data set. I had no idea what Hello Kitty was, but in fact you can
Japanese
simplify the whole matrix, can't you? Do you know what Hello Kitty is? If someone knows what Hello Kitty is, then they're probably not someone you're going to be interested in, but that's it, would be.
Well, as Rush Limbaugh would say, it's a Japanese cartoon. But basically, the point I was going to say, Emil has already interrogated the data set on my behalf
Okay.
to look at possible associations between cognitive ability measured using this puzzle test, composite, and mating and preferences for numbers of children.
Ah.
And there's very little data on this actually. We
Yeah.
know there are negative correlations
Yeah.
between completed fertility
But not-
and partially
but not
completed fertility and IQ.
preferences, yes.
But preferences data are hard to come by.
Yeah.
And we have, funnily enough, better data on K and mating preference and
Yeah.
children preferences than we do on G. And what Emil found was a negative correlation
Ah.
in this huge data set. So that's the first result to come out of this, as to my
Okay.
knowledge.
Who prefers to date people? Oh yes, what's the thing on dating? Because Steve Saylor had lots of things about if you're going to date across racial groups, then if I recall right, and this is something I wanted to add to the ethnocentricity thing, I think white males had a preference for Asian women, who were seen as more demure and following and so on, and white women, if they're going to go out, were going out with black men who are seen as more virile and more sexual. All right, I've forgotten the other predictions he made. So it could be one aspect which we haven't put into the welcoming foreigners is exoticism and sexual exoticism of someone who is seen as different, all right? Because the other is not always just seen as repulsive because of other, but also exotic for the rarity or some quality of joy of life and so on. Let's have some data here.
So basically, there is a question that says, I would strongly prefer to date someone of my own race. So
Yeah.
it's either or.
Yeah.
So if you do a logistic regression with standard predictor stuff, you get these results. So the people with higher, they prefer to date people of their own race. Given, and this is mostly US, Canadian, kind of Western sample. But it's worldwide, it's just most other than
Okay,
US.
so when it says white, the beta is 0,
Because it's the comparison group.
is a comparison group.
So
And-
basically, whites are the most ethnocentric in the dating.
Yes. Okay.
Fascinating.
White
revealed
women are
preferences.
religious. These
What?
white, conservative, religious women. These are the most ethnocentric you can find.
That's encouraging.
Does the data show that men are more exclusive and women are more inclusive?
If they're exclusive and
You
inclusive.
mean exclusive in ethnocentric?
Yes, in an ethnocentric sense, yes. In other words, women are more having more of a tendency to include people of other races, and males have a tendency to exclude people of other
I
races.
don't know, but there's 2,000 questions, so you just get on and do your own analysis. I just did this one because
Okay, I'll do it tomorrow.
Dutton's talk was about this, and I had here's a huge data set and sample size 34,000.
I mean,
something.
because, go ahead, Michael.
This is actually a question on behalf of Noah, who, as you know, studies relationships between IQ and political orientation. Have you looked at that relationship in
No,
this data?
not yet. Well, you see, there it's standard what you find. If you do the self-described stuff, the liberals are highest.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's because they mostly interpret it as kind of social liberty. And all, if you look at all these personal freedom things like abortion, gay marriage, blah, blah, but all of these have positive relationship to IQ, just like Noah found.
Yes. Go
Emil.
ahead. Hey, Tom.
Yes, quick question. In this data set, could you get hold of information on how many times someone was visited or liked by others?
No, it's private.
Oh.
You can only this is I took what was public on the site and I put it in a data set. So anything you cannot see, it's not in the data set, right? That would be private information. Only OKCupid has that, but they have an entire data block analyzing their own data, including the private data. So they did a lot of studies like this cross-racial by gender attraction using the actual who writes to who data instead of who answers who they like. So maybe sometimes people, they actually write someone else than they publicly state they do like.
Yes.
There's no data on who gets married on this site, from this site.
There's no data on what?
No data on success stories, shall we say.
Well, I don't know. There's 2,000 something variables. I haven't read all of them. It takes too long.
Is this data mostly from the US? Have you done anything to do with geographic location?
Yes.
Obviously, we
They
have
state city in the
a sample here where potentially people of minority races in the US will need to date whites more because
Yes, well, they state their city. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cities that have the same names in the US. So it says, you know, US, and then it says, you know, Paris or something. And it's like 10 Parises in the US. So it's not very useful.
So do you know what proportion of white women are interested in black men?
No. I guess you could look.
So the figures here we have, again the betas, and we have quite a high beta 1.49 for race black.
Negative, no?
Yeah. What is
It means they're less ethnocentric.
they're less?
Yes, the whites are the most ethnocentric.
Oh, and blacks are less
Yes.
ethnocentric.
White is 0, so everything below 0 is less.
It's also confounded with status, you know. If blacks meet white persons, they can gain in status.
Yes.
And of course, the one everybody wants is this one, cognitive ability, not very ethnocentric there. It's the one doesn't was talking about.
So what?
Well,
Cognitive ability has a clear negative association with ethnocentric.
I don't understand why it's so weird that it's the other way round. What me and Guy did, and I'm trying to get my head around why.
No, this is exactly like you said.
No, with the race ethnocentrism.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if that's a function of being America or a function of the sample is skewed from basically perverts and weirdos who think what one.
I didn't go any further. I just did this.
It's always skewed because it's what people say they want, and what they say they want is not what they really want.
Sometimes. Sometimes not. But we only have public data, so
And also self-descriptions are always wrong, aren't they? Liberals think
I
they're
guess you should
intelligent.
check.
Because other people are going to see that you're saying, there's no way on a dating site, if you wanted to pick up girls, surely you'd say you were left wing. Surely always.
Depends what sort of girls you want to pick up.
Oh yeah, if you have a special
It's interesting you have quickly generated some interesting research topics, but there is the issue of self-description and how valid that is. However, on dating site, although you may be signaling various things, you are also motivated to find a mate. So you may show off, you may claim to have a large apartment and all the rest of it which you don't actually have, but you are revealing what you consider to be the correct things to boast about. Eventually, however, you've got to get to the questions which really matter to you. Alright? Now the traditional thing which came from the original work about 20 years ago on Lonely Hearts columns in newspapers is that men spoke about their achievements and their status. Women spoke about their appearance, right? And it seemed to be a trade-off. The man is saying, I have resources, and I have power, you can trust me, and the women are saying, you would want to have sex with me, and very probably want to have children with me because of my kind, good personality and attractiveness. All right? Now, that could be a culturally loaded thing, but that's the way it was at that time. So it'd be interesting to look back at that data, if we're going to work on this, to look at it. Now, for me, this is fascinating because on this we can derive intelligence test correlates. We could link this to the Google studies, and then I could go back to my 7 tribes of intellect thing and give much more detail and colour about what the 7 levels of intellectual ability are like in terms of things which would interest people, their political attitudes, their sexual preferences, the sexual behaviors, and so on, and we have a much more vivid way of talking to people about the differences which intelligence can make to actual real-life behaviors. So it's a fascinating possibility.
One more comment. Many dating sites provide a little space for descriptions and essays, and it shouldn't be too hard to do analysis of these by type of vocabulary and such used.
Yes.
And I know people claim I can pick from a quick description roughly how smart people are in the obvious extremes. I have a big blah blah blah. I want a blah blah blah. And it's a different from, I like to discuss Kierkegaard and statistical theory with the emphasis on latent appearances.
Yes, it is. Though I think I would not trust any mate who claimed such interest, would they?
Just a quick one. Emil, there's got to be an item in there measuring preferences for short versus long-term mating.
Tons.
Great.
Yeah.
This.
Recognizing the Google
Okay, we can test Panky's claim that people disprefer intelligence in short-term mating, but prefer it in long-term mating. We can replicate or test it. It would be very interesting.
Maybe.
Yes, I tried this with medical students. We, in the stage when I was doing lots of research, we got medical students to design the description of a woman who these largely conservative medical students might date. And so we did the prototypical left-wing feminist woman, and they all chose her, and we were totally bemused. And then when we went through the questionnaires, people had written, for one night only. So it was, this woman doesn't like me as a conservative man, I'll show her, I'll have sex with her and then dump her and it's all right. So these are the difficulties.
Yeah, just to add that there was specifically a question that addresses your interest for how long they want, a partner. It could, they specifically ask for a short-term, long-term relationship, or just for a night, or if it should be a partner for life.
Yes.
Actually,
this is really good stuff because the Penke study was done on students. Yeah. You can do it on 70,000 people.
Yeah.
You can see if it generalizes into natural human populations.